I knew this guy was great, but like the work he puts in, that's what people see, the production. Nobody knows all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes where it's like, the intrinsic motivation, the natural feel. He is, the stories could go on, but this guy, and then just seeing what it meant to him to watch him accomplish things. Like you talk about a guy that really didn't care about the individual accolades and was all about just winning and trying to affect positive change with his teammates. He's a fucking G.
All right, this is awesome. One of my favorite coaches in the game, my former team. Of course, they figured out a way to win a Super Bowl and the whole thing. So Sean McVay joins the show now. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I still haven't forgiven you, though. You won a couple Super Bowls yourself, 2018, in crunch time, back and forth, and you get a sack. I should have known better than to leave you an opportunity on a long developing play action. You just beat our right tackle like a drum and just broke my heart, you jerk.
Oh, dude, it was a big deal for me because obviously I cared a great deal about a lot of those people on that team. And, coming back, I love playing at the Coliseum too.
Yeah.
I know you guys got a shiny building now, but that was it had to be cool for a couple of years. Like the history in that building for me, walking out on the field where my dad played, seeing that flame in the end zone. And then of course my old team, that was an incredible game both ways.
It was. You know what? It was special to play in the Coliseum. There was a lot of great memories there. Like you said, I think we both appreciate the history of the game, but it was a back and forth battle. Two of the top teams in the NFC guys came out on top, and then to see you guys finish the deal, I was happy for you because I feel like I've known you based on the amount of people that you've influenced in a positive way, the Reggie Scotts, Aaron Donalds of the world. And, like I said, man, big fan of yours.
Oh, likewise, Coach. And, everybody talks so highly of you, my old teammates, and one of them, Aaron Donald. I just can't help but when I heard that story about him telling you, hey, Coach, I'm full.
Yeah,
I can hear that coming out of his mouth, and I know exactly what he means because he was the hungriest guy that I ever played with. And
no doubt.
For him to be full, I think it speaks to the toll the game takes on us all and the weight that was on his shoulders for a decade plus. And you were a big part of that run for him. Talk to me about your first reaction when you heard, hey, I'm full, Coach. And is it unfair to use the term replace Aaron Donald? Because there is no replacing Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the first thing is, if when you know Aaron really well, and one of the things that I appreciate the most, Chris, is he let me in. We had a relationship that I really cherished. I remember when I was interviewing for the job, I went over when it was basically like, if you don't shit yourself, you're going to get the job. So they want to make sure Aaron Donald's okay with it. So I go over the 4 seasons, meet with Aaron Donald, meet with Reggie Scott, and he's looking at me like, hey, this guy's going to be the head coach. I got to see this to believe it. But right away, his ability to communicate honestly about what he thought we needed to do to move in the right direction. One of the things that he talked about was, all right, hey, we need to have, consistent accountability across the board. And I can remember one of the things that epitomizes exactly who he is. First year, we're midway through the season. We had usually started out the Wednesdays where it'd start with defense while the offense was lifting. So it's an 8:00 meeting. He came in at about 30 seconds afterwards. And I said, and I know he was already in the building doing his normal rhythm and routine. And he says, I said, where were you? He says, I was using the bathroom, so he's taking his shit, finishing up. I said, all right, well, I'm not going to find you. He says, oh no, you find me, man. I got to be accountable to that. He made me find him when he was late for a meeting, taking a shit.
Dude, that's who he is, though. I mean, not the shitting part. It's not like he shits all day, but I can picture that because that's important to him. He does everything the right way.
He never did anything that he didn't ask of somebody else. And I think the best way you model authentic leadership is you model the way. And he did that every single day. He brought people with him while being selective with his words. But to answer your original question, Chris, I think the biggest thing I would say is when you know somebody like I did with Aaron, he didn't have to tell me. I saw the way that he moved throughout the whole last year. He took moments in he was really cherishing it. He's always really been appreciative of the journey, and I've always loved that about him. But there was just certain things when you can just see people are savoring moments that it felt like he knew without wanting the attention that typically can be accompanied with some of these retirements, things like that. That's not who he is, but I just knew by the way that he kind of moved throughout that year, the way that he poured into these younger guys, the way that he was, even just after games, it was just you're cherishing these moments. And when he told me, I knew, like right when we walked off the field in Detroit, I said, "That's it, huh?" He goes, "Yep, that's it." I said, "I love you. You've changed my life for the better. I can't even tell you the amount of positive things that you've brought to my life and what you mean to me as a person, more importantly than a player." But man, I mean, already this offseason, he's like the guy that you can use to tell stories about that resonates with these cats. And I think that's a powerful way of trying to get messages across.
He's a rare human being. That's what I tell my kids. I'm like, yeah. You should have seen him. He's one of those people.
He really is.
So hard to replace. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. When did you know he was just different? Because there were those moments that we had early on. I mean, the only thing I was grateful for is he held out my first 2 years because he just stole offensive linemen's souls. I mean, he ruins practices.
Yeah, he ruins practices. I'm sure for you, there's a thin line of where you're like, hey, we want a good look, but we want to be able to run our shit.
We pissed him off though, because I said, hey, realistically, we're going to play it like what you get paid. What you get played. So we slid to him, the last couple camps, and he's like, he was so pissed at me. I go, hey, bro, this is what's real, because
this is what it is.
False tells for the second and third levels of our defense, because he's getting these quick wins. Guys are like, oh, this is great. I'm like, no, he's going to get so much more attention. But
I knew day two, Coach. I knew day two to answer your question. I remember walking up to Jeff Fisher, me and William Hayes, and saying, hey, Fish, I know it doesn't work this way, but you should go ahead and make him the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, because that's what he deserves. And we told the media he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Now I do this for a living.
You knew that after 2 days?
2 days. The violence with which he uses his hands.
Totally. That's the thing he doesn't get enough credit for is everybody talks about the leverage, the explosion, the accuracy of his hands. He always won with his hands.
They're in a frenzy and they're totally controlled at the same time. And I'll never forget, I was the old guy that was walking into the meeting room at 8:00 after, everything died down in training camp. And, I'd watch film and nobody else really did it. I'm not saying I knew what to do and others didn't. I was just older. And I walked in the meeting room 2-3 nights in a row. Nobody left in the building. This motherfucker's sitting in my desk at my film projector, and he's watching film, and I would kick any other rookie out. But I just watched the way he broke the game down. And it was like somebody at some point taught him football. I don't know who his coach was at Pitt. I don't know who his high school coach was. I don't know if it was dad, but he came to the NFL like a pro. And so that's what happens, and this, when it's a confluence of great physical ability and the work ethic and the understanding of the game. That's what happens. You get Aaron Donald.
Yeah, he's second to none. It's funny that you say that, Chris, because so the first year he's here, we have that first, mini camp that's allotted to the new staff. So that was really the only time in the offseason. So he comes to that first thing and just wrecks practice. I mean, it's 2 days of just pure carnage right before the draft, and then he's working through a contract thing, and he was away for the rest of the offseason. Then he was away for the entire really training camp. He actually came the week we were opening up against the Colts, and he could have played, but his first game was against Washington. Long story short, we're playing Jacksonville early on in the season. It's like week 6, and we're getting ready to go to Jacksonville, play them. We were going to stay in Jacksonville and then play the Cardinals in London after that. But I go in, I'm leaving Thursday night. That's when you're kind of wrapping up the game plan, putting the red zone stuff together. I'm leaving. It's like 9:30 at night. There's one light on in the whole building because normally people wrap up a little bit earlier. This freak is in the DLine room, and he's watching the get back on track downs to see the sets of the guards and things like that. And that was my I knew this guy was great, but the work he puts in, that's what people see, the production, nobody knows all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes where it's like, the intrinsic motivation, the natural feel. He is, the stories could go on, but this guy, and then just seeing what it meant to him to watch him accomplish things. Like you talk about a guy that really didn't care about the individual accolades and was all about just winning and trying to affect positive change with his teammates. He's a fucking G.
Yeah, love that guy. We both love that motherfucker. I think suffice to say. And my question, my $1,000,000 question to you, because you're the scheme guy. How would you game plan for Aaron Donald if you had to play him now that he's out of the league and you can kind of dream that up without any repercussions?
Well, he'd get the slide every single snap. And then in any of the situations where it elicited 5-0 protections when we get into our odd spacing, like I've seen teams do, they just say, hey, let the back check him. And unless it's a rare situation where you get early control, we're just sacrificing 20% of our eligibles. That was where, like, when sometimes we'd move him to the edge, I'm like, no, let him rush inside. You can't manipulate protections as much, but I've seen more full turn protections. I've seen more people willing to just say, fuck it, we'll waste 20% of our eligibles with a back or a tight end and just put him in that A or B gap based on where he's at. And then when he's out, I would jump the ball and not let him sub back in.
Yeah. That's a big one. And then taking shots when he walks off the field. Like,
we literally had a menu of plays. Like we had a different call sheet because of how teams would approach him when he'd go out of the game, knowing that was the approach of a lot of these sound OCs that, we would play some more conservative things deep to short because that was their time to get those plays off.
It's so interesting. And, talking to you is really interesting because you've been the person in these meetings when you're playing, maybe not Aaron Donald, but somebody like him. And I wonder who those guys through your tenure are that have kept you up at night.
There's special players across this league. He garners so much attention. I think when you look at these interior players, obviously Chris Jones has done a magnificent job affecting the game in a positive way, modeling his game after Aaron. Matabuke has a big season last year, but I think these edge players, I thought Bosa's maturity as a rookie from when he came into this league, talking about Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
I was incredibly impressed with the maturity that he played with and his production in both phases. We practiced against Crosby last year. The relentlessness that he plays with, the energy, the production in both phases, Myles Garrett. But I'll tell you what, it seems like every week, because these guys are getting so good, you're having to identify, all right, who do we want to make sure that we're paying extra attention to? How does that alter and affect the way that the ball's got to come out? How do we move the spot? There's some good players in our league that really seem like they show up on a week-to-week basis. Who stands out to you?
Who stands out to me? I think Max Crosby stands out to me because I think he does a lot of it alone. I don't mean to disrespect anybody around him, but when you look at like San Francisco's defense, and I love Nick Bosa, but they've got a guy, and I'd be excited to ask you about this, like in Fred Warner, who just deletes the middle of the field. And there's certain things that are just not options, right? And so you've got people with casts around them. But I look at Max Crosby and I say, yeah, he changes the game in a big way. I think TJ Watt changes in both phases because he's got that like innate playmaking ability. He can affect the ball as well. Like he's going to make a great play in the flat as well.
You're right. He is a freak, and I think, when you look at it too, like Highsmith's a legit dude, on the other side of him that doesn't get enough credit, but you're right. I mean, we basically altered our whole plan to affect TJ this last year. And then the one time he drops into coverage, he picks off an underneath route and takes it back to inside the 5. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. He finds ways to affect the game.
And Micah, we haven't talked about Micah, pick your poison. However they're going to use him, he's going to be a game changer. I wonder with these edge guys, you said it earlier, and I agree. When people ask me, Chris, was it more fun to play next to an Aaron Donald or across from a Robert Quinn? I mean, it's fun either way. Don't get me wrong. But I prefer playing next to a Fletcher Cox or an Aaron Donald because of the way that you can dictate certain things. And if that guy's a team player, you're going to play off him. He's going to create for you. If you have an end on the other side, you can play high-low. You can do certain things, but you could both get chipped. When you have a great end, what are take me inside the detail of alignments, eye candy, all the things you can do to affect a rusher besides just sliding or chipping. Because I think for me, I can remember it could be a reduced split tight end who you had split out, and now you just got that like nasty like 2-3 yard kind of split that I'm looking at and saying he could be blocking down on me. It could be a whole bunch of eye candy with pre-snap motion. What are the things that you can do to affect the defensive end that aren't simple?
Yeah, I think you just mentioned a lot of them. Just people in proximity, backs from the backfield. Kyron Williams does a great job of shaving edges when guys are just a speed up the field rusher. But I think you said it. When you rush, like I can only imagine how much that would have really come to fruition with you and Aaron rushing off of one another if you got a handful of years to really go together. That was like, it was so impressive listening to him articulate who he liked rushing with. Yeah. Because there was some leeway and luxuries we gave him to be able to have a two-way go or get vertical through the B, and now let's natural underneath because he's really containing through the B gap. But as far as those edge rushers, it's any sort of presence. And, we're a big reduced split outfit, but you said it, whether it's motions, guys in proximity where I could block down on you, there's that threat of chip. And that's really with any sort of C area location player, whether that's receivers or tight ends. Having the back cognizant of being able to lend a presence one way or the other for the tackle. And those are all things that are a huge part of the game plan because these guys are so good. If you're not cognizant, they wreck the game. And every guy you mentioned is somebody that we've gone up against at some point. And for different reasons, they all are absolute nightmares to prepare for. And that's where I think Aaron was so unique because he really changed the game in terms of the production, especially as it relates to the sack production of the TFL from an interior player. Yeah. It had been so heavily influenced by edge guys, but now it's really like, all right, the defensive line is going to affect and influence and change the game, and nobody did it more than Aaron from that interior spot.
So it feels like now this year you guys have some, like a legit 4 deep, where, we talked about it like Moneyball, if you've seen that movie where, it's Giambi or it's like, you've got these 4 young guys that the sum of the parts could add up to something special. And, I wonder what you're most excited about when you look at this group. I look at Young and I say, he hasn't even figured it out yet. And he had 8 sacks last year.
He's come a long way. He was a guy that came in at a good career at Tennessee, and I think he's just continuing to learn how to add some tools to his arsenal, understand those looks to own. He had a really good spring. He was arguably one of the more improved players on our football team because he's got stuff in his body, and now it's just continuing to say, hey, repetition is the mother of learning. What's my primary? What's my complementary? Let me master that. Let me understand and own where my opportunities are for take it calls, different things like that. I think he really did a great job. Even just something as simple as, which you always did a great job of, but like when you're playing out of a 2-point early on in some of these rundowns and it's not known pass, like how about not false stepping and what a difference that makes for your get off and your ability to affect the offensive line. He's really done a great job. I'm excited about where he can go, and I thought he was one of the bright spots of the spring for sure.
And then Verse and Fisk, the 2 buddies, this is a great moment. It was an awesome moment. I know you like the players. It's not about the moment, but the moment was special. But Verse to me feels like a perfect compliment.
He is
to Young.
He's a reactionary rusher. Like I always felt this way about you. Like you can see certain guys that predetermine what they're going to do with their rush plan, and then other guys that, all right, they're starting this way, but then I get an overset and I can naturally counter underneath, or I can hit my spin. And he's a reactionary rusher. He's a polished player for a young kid. The game makes sense. We still need to have him really understand where those opportunities are. But man, you feel him. Like I always look at it from an offensive perspective. It's like, if I feel you defensively, then I'm worried about you and we better have a plan for you. And I thought he played a grown man style of football. That was what I liked. And he and Fisk were key and critical for why Florida State did what they did. Once they lost their quarterback, they were heavily relying on that defense. You could see they gave them some more luxury and leeway to be able to rush off of one another. There was an unspoken agreement in terms of just their naturals, and some of them were predetermined games. And you could even see that stuff start to come to life with some of the ops we've given them out here.
And the secondary, man, I thought y'all did a great job defensively relative to the expectation. a lot of guys playing a lot of snaps back there that people
Sure.
didn't know much about. And I thought Raheem did a great job. You've replaced a few coordinators this year. What goes into new scheme, but also why the guys you brought in? Darius Williams coming back. I've always really liked him.
Me too.
Cam Curl, there were more expensive options, but I thought that was a great pickup. What do you see as the outlook for those guys, and how does replacing a scheme affect a group of players that are used to routine?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It was awesome to be able to address some of those things, and then some guys that are still here that gained some valuable experience last year that we're counting on. But you mentioned it, to bring Darius Williams back. That there's effortless movement because of the work he puts in. He's strong in his lowers. He stays patient. He'll stay square. He's got legitimate ball skills. I mean, like if you get him an opportunity to be able to get his hands on the ball, he's usually catching it and he's making people pay. He's got a great concept trigger based on the work he puts in. He understands, how the routes are timed up with the quarterback's drop, and he can play visual on the receiver. He can play visual to the quarterback and get, authentic triggers on concepts. Cam Curl is a guy that, and I say this in the most complimentary way because I love this guy. He reminds me of Mark Barron. Mark Barron was like a silent assassin. He takes everything in. He's so smart. He's tough as shit. Cam Curl has a similar demeanor and disposition as him. Now, Mark will knock you. I mean, not Mark.
Mark knocked me senseless a couple times at friendly fire.
I believe it. He was a total G. But I say that in terms of how much confidence I have in what Cam can be. I thought you saw him do a lot of stuff in Washington where he can come down and play man coverage on different guys at that 2 or 3 location. He's violent the way he attacks the football. I like the way that he's a close quarter tackler. And then you could see him play in different parts of the field. And we'll ask him to do some different stuff. But the game makes sense to him. You ask him a question and he's answering it. He picks and chooses his words wisely. But like this guy's taking everything in. He knows what the hell is going on. And he's a grown man. Quentin Lake is another guy that I think is going to be a really good player for us. He played the nickel position for us last year. He can play star or nickel. And then getting Tre'Davious White. While we haven't seen him on the field yet, that guy is a guy that I've always respected his body of work. You don't bet against people like that, even though he's had some tough injuries. So we're excited about our back end.
No question. Take me through, at the end of last year, you guys reel off a bunch of wins after the bye week, and the bye week is different for every team. What changed for you guys? And then when you got into the playoffs, I felt like there was a hidden experience that people underestimated from you guys. Like people forgot you were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and they forgot a bunch of guys were back. The team changed, but a bunch of guys are back. Do you feel like that paid off? And how much fun was that Detroit game? Because that was a fucking war.
It was that was as loud of an atmosphere and environment as I've ever been a part of, Chris. I would say this. The best part about last year is that there was real adversity. I think that's when you find out about people. It's like when you're in the storm, how the hell do you handle that stuff? And I wouldn't say there was a change. When we were 3-6, there was some opportunities to execute at a higher level. We missed Stafford for a game and a half, which was obviously a big deal, but we played some good teams. We came up short, but the guys kept improving. And when we went 7-1 down the stretch, I didn't think there was really a lot different approach. It was, we happened to get the results, but the process was consistent. Guys were mentally tough. They established a resilience in the midst of some of the adversity we faced early on. And as well as I do, if you're playing your best ball at the end of the year, you can be dangerous. And I'll tell you what, we came up short, and there's things that motivate you and drive you the right way. I think it was a great learning experience for a lot of young players to go be in that atmosphere and environment that it just is different. The fans, the noise, the excitement, what's at stake. But I was proud as hell of that team. Even though we've had some other seasons that we might have gone further, probably my most rewarding season as a coach. And I think a lot of it was because, and I'd mentioned it before, in the midst of so many good things going on here, I lost my way a little bit. And 2022 really exposed me, where the results weren't what we wanted. But I was exposed in terms of my shortcomings, some of my insecurities, and I had to really address that. And by no means am I perfect, but I'm a lot better off. And from that 22 season where you're saying like, you're actually thinking about not coaching anymore. What the hell is wrong with you? But those were real things because you lost your purpose and perspective in the midst of, the good stuff occurring. And last year reminded me of why I love this shit so much because of those players. I think it was a great balance of youthful energy and exuberance. These guys, they just came out, they fucking competed, they loved it. And then we had some veteran guys that kind of steered the ship the right way. The Aaron Donalds, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, like you talk about a guy that went through some stuff and just handled it like a total G based on not being as healthy as he was. Nobody knows that. But that to me gives me more respect for him, just how he handled, a challenging year, but just kept battling, kept contributing in the way that he was capable of within the framework of his responsibilities.
And I want to get Coach out of here, but I got two little scheme things here. First off, I thought last year a big turning point for you guys was you getting the back healthy, right?
He is a stud, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a stud, but it's a staple of what you guys do. Like, I remember playing you guys when I went to Philly, and it was all about, outside run game. If that thing's not there, it becomes harder with the play action. And you guys do such a good job of making everything look the same. And I felt like when people watched that team, and this is what I said coming into last year, you guys were just as dangerous as that Super Bowl team because you had Puka and Cooper outside. And you had a back that I might not put up there with Gurley in his prime, but this kid's young and he's pretty good. And the quarterback is a fucking Hall of Famer. So I look at that team and I say, it's a lot of the same, but there were small differences in the way you guys got to the play action. And it was the same formula. But can you talk to me about what you had to do to tinker with the concepts a little bit to fit the throws that Matt could make and the throws that the runs that Williams likes to make?
No doubt. I think a lot of it, and it was kind of an evolution. We knew we wanted to shift our identity a little bit based on our personnel. We were bigger inside. You draft Steve in the second round. You're able to acquire Kevin Dotson. You got big tackles in Alaric and Rob. But I thought Kyron, that was kind of what his skill set was. He's not limited in any scheme, but I've never been a part of a really good offense that didn't have the ability to threaten you with the run and the pass.
Right.
I did in 21, we were dangerous, but we weren't as good running the football. We were much more like the difference in when we went 7-1. If you just said, all right, production wise, we were so efficient running the football. You get Kyron Williams back off of the temporary IR. It does allow you to stay on track more where you're in more of those regulated down and distances where you can really have a lot of the stuff we want to do come to life. The marriage of the run and the pass, that little conflict of, all right, is this a play action? Is it a boot? Is it a core run? Oh shit, it's a play action screen. And our players brought it to life, but the players enabled us to be able to establish an identity where, you could go more at people. We wanted to be more physical. I thought that was one of the things that just based on when you look at the last couple of years, we've been a good team, but where can we improve with the caliber of people we're bringing, the types of schemes that just elicit a certain toughness that's required. And I thought that was a big deal that the players brought to life. And it makes it a lot easier when you're getting 4 and 5 and 6. And then you can set up other things that enable you to be able to be a little bit more flexible as a play caller from an offensive standpoint.
I got one more, and I'm going to save my other 45 questions for the next time you come on because I could.
I'm enjoying this.
Okay, the last one. We had Andy Reid on, and he told us a story about getting a play from a janitor.
I love it.
No lie. And I'm wondering, because I put you in that echelon of creative play callers. Have you ever gotten a concept from somewhere you didn't expect? And what's the zone that Sean McVay needs to be in to think this shit up? Is it on your porch looking at the ocean? Is it just in your office? Like, is it listening to music? How do you get rid of writer's block, so to speak?
I tell you what, I'd be a lot less tormented if I had a clear-cut answer. But usually when I get the R&B going, that usually gets the good vibes. It is crazy, though, that like when you're thinking about something so hard, some of the best ideas kind of come when you're driving into work or you're not really trying. And those are like legitimate things behind that in terms of just our brains. But I tell you what, I've heard it said before: all the best coaches are the best thieves. You know, I'll steal a lot of different stuff. We'll use a lot of principles that I learned when I was a sorry ass quarterback running the triple option in high school. You know, and just ways of putting defenders in conflict. If you can't block them, then read them. We'll do different things like that. That really was a heavy influence on some of the jet sweeps that we started doing in 18, where you're booking a defensive end and circling the defense.
Oh yeah.
That kind of goes back to, you know, the influence. And you guys did some of that when you were here before I got here with Tavon. And so, but I'll steal plays all the time. You know, Andy Reid's a guy that you're always watching their stuff and if it fits for you. But I think the biggest thing is, you know, the music for me, making sure I get my rest. Like I used to think it was like a badge of courage to like sleep 4 hours a night. And I realize how freaking dumb that shit is now.
You get one of these damn watches and then you're like, oh, you slept 4 hours. You know what I mean? You need a little something.
See, you're exactly right. I'd be a real basket case with the Oura ring or stuff. They say your sleep was shit. Then it'd throw my whole day off. But it has been, it's organic thing, you know, but it's usually as a result of when these players start bringing stuff to life and then you're saying, all right, how can we maximize their skill sets? That's when it's the most fun. And sometimes it's the unpredictable things where if you had said, you know, we would have turned into what we did last year, you know, that wasn't necessarily the plan, but the players brought it to life. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's always about you guys.
Yeah, no question. Well, that's why they love you, Coach, and big fan of watching you guys play. And good luck this year. Hope you come back again.
No, hey, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been fun. We'll have to do this again. It's been too long. I kind of got my feelings hurt that it took this long to ask me.
Well, the last time I saw you, I think was the ESPYs.
Yeah.
I just, you know what? Right after I retired, I got cut, and you were like, "Hey,
how
they
good
told
is
me
that
some
story
about
though?" That's my first year. Yeah,
and then we both won rings.
But how about this for you though? That's the best story though. Is so. You know, we were late to the red carpet. This is me and my wife were late to the deal. I mean, I look like an intern. They're like, all right, hey, Chris Long, come on in. So they let you and you're traveling through there and you're kind of looking back and they're like, who the fuck is this guy? So then we just got the walk of shame running away. No red carpet. They said, we don't know who the hell you are, but you're no chance you're the head coach for the Rams.
Hey, give it a couple years. Everybody knew who you were, Coach. That's great, man.
Hey, I forgot about that. That was it.
Yeah.
I tell you what, that was not a fun ESPYs experience for me and my wife. She's like, what the hell's going on?
You said you were a big shot.
All
right. Well, Coach, I appreciate you, man. Tell all the fellas hello and wish you luck, man.
Hey, appreciate you, Chris.